Welcome to your chronological order lesson number 2, número 2. You're going to read the events below about how to bake a cake. Then number the events in 1 through 7 in the order in which they need to occur. Pay attention to the signal words when determining the order of events. Please make sure to write your name. When you are finished, please put this in the bin so I can grade it. Have your headphones on. Please go at your own pace. Let's get started. So the purpose of this is you're going to be looking at signal words with me, and you're going to put these events in chronological order. Remember, this is the fourth text structure that we're focusing on. The word chrono, remember, means time. And then the word logic means order. So we're putting events in order, dealing with time. Let's look at our first event. This is a recipe. Then add the eggs one at a time to the butter and sugar mixture. When the ingredients are mixed well, pour the batter into cake pans and bake for 25 minutes. Before gathering the ingredients for the cake, preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. After the cake has cooled, add icing and enjoy. First, beat the butter and sugar until fluffy and light. While your oven is preheating, gather your dry ingredients, flour, salt, baking powder, and your wet ingredients, butter, sugar, eggs, and vanilla. Next, slowly add in the dry ingredients to the combined wet ingredients. Now, when you're baking, we have to follow our recipe in order, dealing with time. Now, which of these events is the first step in this recipe? We have to look at our clue words. So let's circle our clue signal words when we're dealing with putting events in order, dealing with time. Chronological order. We have then, when, before, after, first, while, and next. So please, what I do, you do. Please circle these signal words. Out of these words that we have circled, which one signifies that this is the first step? Now, I get where you would think first beat the butter and sugar until fluffy and light, but that's later in the recipe. What is the first thing you need to do when you are baking a cake? You need to preheat the oven. Remember the word preheat. Pre means before. So please write that. So before heating, you need to, before you bake, you need to get the oven going. You need to heat it up. It needs to get really, really hot. So before you gather the ingredients, you have to have the oven ready. So this is going to be our first event. So please write a number 1. We now have to find our second event, the second step. This was our first step. Now, it's not going to be first, because it doesn't make sense. Let's read. Before gathering the ingredients for the cake, preheat the oven. So after you preheat the oven, what do you do next? And we're going to look down here. Let's see if you can find it. While your oven is preheating, so I've just turned it on, it's going, it's getting hot. While this is happening, I need to gather the dry ingredients, flour, salt, baking powder, and the wet ingredients. So right now I'm gathering my wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. So that's step number 2 in our recipe. Now, after I had gathered all of my ingredients on the countertop, what do I need to do next? Or what do you need to do next? You're going to first beat the butter and sugar until fluffy and light. This is what you do when you bake a cake. You first get the butter and sugar and you beat it until it's fluffy and light. Now, what is the next step when you're baking a cake? The next step when you're baking a cake. We're going to move up here. I have, after the cake has cooled, add icing and enjoy. No, the cake has already been baked at this point. What do I do after I have the butter and sugar fluffy and light? When the ingredients are mixed well, pour the batter into a cake pan and bake. No, I'm not ready to bake yet. I need to add my eggs at a time, one at a time, to the butter and sugar mixture, because we just talked about how we have to beat the butter and sugar. So now, after they're fluffy and light, I need to add the eggs one at a time to that mixture of butter and sugar. Now, after I add one egg at a time to the batter of butter and sugar, what do I need to do next? I can't bake it yet. I can't enjoy the cake. It's not there yet. That's not where I'm at. So it has to be this one. Next, our clue word is next. Slowly add the dry ingredients to the combined wet ingredients. Remember, my wet ingredients were the butter, sugar, and eggs. Now I have to mix the flour, salt, and baking powder. This is my fifth step when you bake a cake. Now, after I mix my dry and wet ingredients, these are the events that I have left. What is the sixth step? Is it after the cake has cooled, add icing and enjoy? Let's ask ourselves that. Our cake hasn't been baked, so we cannot enjoy it. It must be this step. When the ingredients are mixed well, meaning the dry and wet ones, pour the batter into the cake pans and bake for 25 minutes. Then, after I do that, the cake should be cooled. After the cake has cooled, add icing and enjoy. So you were able to put the events in order, the recipe on how to bake a cake in order, from the first step all the way to the last one, the seventh step. Good job. Now let's turn it over to the back. And we're going to read the events below about the life cycle of bees. Then number the events 1 through 7 in the order in which they occur. Pay attention to the signal words when determining the order of events. So let's read our events first and determine which one is going to be first. We have, once the egg hatches in the wax cell, worker bees feed the larva. Next, the egg hatches after 9 to 10 days. Finally, after 21 days, the adult bee leaves the cell. While sealed in the wax cell, the larva spins a cocoon and changes into a pupa. Soon, the larva reaches full growth. The life cycle of a honeybee begins when a queen bee lays an egg in a wax cell, or then the workers seal the full-grown larva into the cell with wax. We need to circle our signal words to help us out to determine which events go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and our seventh step. So our clue signal words are then, soon, finally, next. So, out of these, what is the first step in the life cycle of a bee? We need to look at a word in the events dealing with the start of something. I want to see if you can find it. Look at all these events. Which one has a word that's a synonym to the word starting? And I see it right here. Begins. The life cycle of a honeybee begins when a queen bee lays an egg in a wax cell. That's our first step. What is our second step in the life cycle of bees? So the queen bee lays an egg in a wax cell. Then the the egg needs the egg needs to hatch after 9 to 10 days. So after the egg hatches, what's going to happen? And this is our third step. Once the egg hatches in the wax cell, worker bees feed the larva. What is our fourth step in the life cycle of bees? Finally, after 21 days, the adult bee leaves the cell. Because of the clue word finally, I think this is going to be our last step, but let's wait and see. Is it while sealed in the wax cell, the larva spins a cocoon and changes into a pupa? No, it seems to be one of the last steps in the life cycle of a bee. Is it soon the larva reaches full growth? Maybe. Or then the workers seal the full-grown larva into the cell with wax. It's going to be soon. So once the egg hatches in the wax cell, worker bees feed the larva. Then soon the larva reaches full growth. What happens next? Can't be finally. It hasn't changed into a pupa yet. It must be then the workers seal the full-grown larva into the cell with wax. Now, we have our last two events. We have while sealed in the wax cell, the larva spins a cocoon and changes into a pupa, or finally, after 21 days, the adult bee leaves the cell. This is our sixth step, and this one's going to be our last one. We were right. Finally, that's our seventh step. Now, you were able to put the events of the life cycle of bees. You were able to put the life cycle of bees in chronological order. We were able to put them in order, dealing with time. So, first, the life cycle of a honeybee begins when a queen bee lays an egg in a wax cell. Next, the egg hatches after 9 to 10 days. Once the egg hatches in the wax cell, worker bees feed the larva. Soon the larva reaches full growth. Then the workers seal the full-grown larva into the cell with wax. While sealed in the wax cell, the larva spins a cocoon and changes into a pupa. Finally, after 21 days, the adult bee leaves the cell. Congratulations, you were able to put this in order. Please turn this in to the turn-in bin. Don't forget your name.